Yesterday, I saw for the first time in my life the movie from 1981 entitled Porky's. Porky's was an incredibly influential movie for pretty much all the wrong reasons and in all the wrong ways. It was the movie that touched off the 1980s teen sex comedy genre, which was apparently a profitable genre. Basically, softcore porn, aimed at kids and the younger generation, featuring high school students or much older people playing high school students, as was often the case. Porky's was really the first movie of that kind, and I grew up, as you can tell by looking at me. I myself am old enough to remember the 80s. I was a teenager in the 80s, and at the time I didn't really watch or care to watch any of these R-rated movies, but it kind of seeped into PG and PG-13 territory as well. Some of the John Hughes movies kind of follow a lot of the same tropes as the teen sex comedy genre. So what can be said about Porky's? I thought it was really interesting just how it wasn't that raunchy, really, except for the language, except for the way the characters talked, the kind of things that they referred to, the kind of language that they used. So they were always talking about sex, but as far as actual content in the movie, there wasn't that much of it. There was a very small bit of female full frontal nudity, and there was one sex scene that was not very explicit, nor was it very erotic, and the film itself seems to have been influenced by, well, as far as I could see, there were a couple of big influences on the movie that I would guess were influences as far as the overall aesthetic of the movie, and those would be American Graffiti, of course, George Lucas's first major hit before, or I guess it was a minor hit, but it became rather acclaimed movie before Star Wars, and also Grease, the movie release of Grease in 1978. Porky, which was released in 1981. I think American Graffiti was maybe 74, 75, something like that. But these seem to be the main influences on the movie Porky's. Now, as far as what to say about this movie as a piece of cinematic history, or what I'm always looking for, which is social engineering, because this is an element I'm convinced is a part of a lot, and I mean a hell of a lot, of what's produced in Hollywood. And surprisingly, the movie Porky's seems to be pushing this message of don't be a bigot. Like there's this character who's Jewish, and there's this other guy who's always making disparaging remarks, calling him a kike, and then they get into a fight, and then it turns out that his father is a big time bigot and Jew hater, and like there's all this messaging about tolerance. This was 1981. This was before this became trendy. This was before SJW, way before SJWism. So it was frankly very surprising that played such a large role in the movie, which this movie that's supposed to be just a raunchy movie about sex with lots of tits. You know, it really wasn't that. It was more of a after school special about, you know, don't discriminate against people who are different from you than it was, you know, a sex romp. I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but that's the way it was. Now, in my 3-volume work, Ruminations of a Low Status Male, I have a section in which I write about teen sex comedies and why they were made and what function they were meant to serve. This is getting back into the social engineering question. And it should be added that there are many, many more movies that could be slotted into the teen sex comedy genre, and a lot of them featured a lot more nudity, and a lot of them were much more, you know, softcore, really, honestly, truly softcore porn than Porky's was. Porky's in some ways just kind of, it reminded me of Happy Days. You know, it was like Happy Days with a lot more sex talk, but there was the same, like, it's set in the 50s, and it's a group of guys who engage in a lot of banter at their high school, and they're all way too old. The actors are all way too old to be high school students. They're all clearly in their late 20s and early 30s. One of the things that I write about in my article, which is that piece that's included in Ruminations of a Low Status Male, is concerns the way in which these movies are made, which is strange and confusing in a way if you want to see them as, you know, just appealing to people's prurient interests, which they clearly did. The advertising, you know, it's always like somebody's eye peeking through a keyhole and a silhouette of a naked lady, you know, taking off a towel, or, you know, and you know, it's very like, oh yeah, guess what, kids? Guess what you're gonna see if you watch this movie? It's very much, and there's always some slogan like, "They're about to lose it all," or, you know, or something like that. Some suggestive, you know, not very clever double entendre. But when you actually watch these movies, you find that the sex is often interspersed with scenes of really cheap, gross humor that's not very well timed, that's not very funny, and it's a very strange kind of phenomenon, because you think if they'd made these movies, you know, with the idea of being softcore porn for teenagers, which, I mean, a lot of teenagers perused softcore and hardcore porn even before this, but these movies were geared explicitly towards the younger market, which is, I think, you know, a further step in towards degeneracy, because, you know, it's one thing if you know you're making a classy erotica, a film of erotica, and it's supposed to be for adults, but these movies, you know, it's obviously trying to appeal to young boys, you know, who want to see breasts and so forth. That they have this kind of humor. It's like they build up to the sex, and then there's some gross joke, or there's some obnoxious or just broad, over the top, not very funny kind of humor that gets worked in, and it's like it's almost like an exercise in blue ball, because if you're watching this movie, you know, for masturbatory reasons, to put it bluntly, then so often your fantasy gets interrupted by this really dumb, stupid, ridiculous humor. And I kind of speculated about why that was the case in my article, which I won't rehash that here, but I'll provide a link to it. I think it still can be read at Affirmative Right. I'll see if I can find it online, if it's still online. Who knows these days what's still online and what's being removed by our tech giant overlords. But I imagine it's still out there. Anyway, what is there to say? What can I finally say about Porky's? Just it's baffling that people went to see this movie in droves and made it a huge hit, and it was all by word of mouth, because the critics hated it. The critics all despised it, and I'm not usually one to take the side of the critics, but they had good reason to, because it's crap. It's not very good. It's poorly acted. It's not funny. It's not even that shocking if you're going for the shock value aspect of it. There's one scene of that's like semi reference to castration anxiety. That's, I guess, kind of interesting. I guess that's the one notorious scene that everybody who's seen the movie knows what I'm talking about. But other than that, it's just like, it's kind of baffling that it became this. And I mean, nobody's in it. Nobody that you know is in it. But it was the movie that touched off this whole rash of other similarly themed movies that marked the 80s just as much as the slasher film genre marked and marred, I would say, 80s cinema. So ultimately a big question mark as far as both what made this movie into a hit, considering that the main story is some preachy thing about racial tolerance. I mean, I don't think any of the horny young guys crowded into the movie theater, saying that they were 17 when they were 14 or 13, just going to see this R-rated film. I don't think any of them wanted to have a lesson on tolerance. Yet that plays such a large role, much larger role in the movie than any of the sex. It's just very strange. It's very mysterious. So those are my thoughts on Porky's. I bet you weren't expecting to hear a review of Porky's from me today, but there you go. I'll try to keep this channel a bit eclectic. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com.